If you're thinking about selling in the next 6 to 12 months, there are 3 things that will determine whether you walk away with full value or leave money on the table. Let's go through them. I'm Betti Russo, North Jersey real estate broker. And what I see consistently, even in this market, are well-positioned homes sitting longer than they should. Not because buyers aren't out there, but because a few key decisions were made without a clear strategy. Today, we're going to fix that. There are 3 pillars: pricing alignment, complete presentation, and early momentum. Miss any one of them and the market will let you know, usually by day 10. Let's get into it. Let's start with the reality check. Yes, inventory is still low. Yes, homes are selling. And yes, by most definitions, we're still in a seller's market in North Jersey. But here is what the label doesn't protect you from. Buyers have gotten more selective, more patient, and considerably less forgiving than they were even a year ago. That shift has a very specific cost. Not 6 weeks in, not after a price reduction, but immediately in the first week on the market. And here's what makes it tricky. Sellers don't always feel the shift in real time. The first few days can look completely normal. Some showings, some interest, the sense that it's just a matter of time. But underneath that surface activity, something has already started to move. By the time it's visible, by the time you're having the conversation about days on market, your leverage has already changed. The sellers who understand this going in are the ones who never have to have that conversation. So what drives it, and what does it take to make sure you're on the right side of it? There are 3 things that determine whether you enter this market with leverage or quietly hand it to the buyer before they've made a single offer. Number 1 is pricing alignment. Not pricing to test, not pricing based on what you hope it's worth. Alignment means your price actually reflects where your home sits in this market. Here's what happens when you're even slightly off. You don't get ignored. You get showings. Buyers, they come through, they look around, and then they go home and make an offer on something else. Because a high price point doesn't create competition, it creates hesitation, and hesitation has a very big cost. Once buyers start hesitating, they start asking questions they weren't asking before, like, why is it still available? Is there something wrong with the house? Is there something I missed? Can I negotiate on this? Those questions change the entire negotiation, and they're really very hard to walk back. I had a client who wanted to test a higher number against my better judgment. I said, okay, it wasn't that much higher. And understandably, it was a great house, but the price created just enough friction that no one felt the urgency. Showings happened, silence followed. We repositioned and re-engaged the buyers who had already walked through. Some of them were already on to something else, but an offer did come in. Not because the market changed, because the strategy did. That's a story with a good ending, but it required more work than it would have if we'd entered right the first time. Pricing isn't about what you want for your home. It's about what creates momentum, and momentum, especially in the first week, is everything. Number 2, presentation, and I mean complete presentation, not just good enough. Buyers won't tell you what's costing you the sale, but I will. Here's a pattern I see more than I like to. A seller does most of the work. They declutter, they clean, maybe they paint, but there are a few things left unfinished. A fixture that needs replacing, a closet that's still packed. The thinking is buyers will see past it. They'll understand. Here's the problem. An incomplete presentation doesn't just show, it speaks loudly. And what it says to a buyer is, what else am I not seeing? That question is quiet. Buyers won't say it out loud, but once it's there, it starts to color everything. The price suddenly feels less justified. The negotiations feel less certain. Your home needs to walk into this market with confidence. And make sure you're following along. I cover this all the time. Number 3, and the one that most sellers underestimate until they're already past it, Early momentum. There's a window when selling your home. Miss it, and the math completely flips. The first 7 to 10 days, that is your window. When a home generates real interest in that window, urgency builds. Buyers feel competition. They bring their best offers because they're afraid of losing the house. When a home misses that window, days on market start working against you, quietly at first, and then very visibly. Buyers who are watching start waiting, and waiting turns into leverage. Their leverage, not yours. The goal is to never reach that point. If you're thinking about selling in the next 6 to 12 months, that's exactly why I'm here. Reach out. The link to connect is below. I want to stop here for a second because if you're planning to sell in North Jersey in the next 6 to 12 months, everything I'm describing is completely mappable before you list. The pricing alignment, the presentation timeline, the momentum strategy, none of this has to be figured out under pressure. That's exactly what the seller strategy call is built for. We look at your specific leverage points, your price range, your neighborhood, before any of these decisions become reactive. Sellers who have this conversation early enter the market differently. That's not a sales pitch. That's just what the data shows. Again, the link is in the show notes. That's where we start. Let's keep going. There are 2 specific moments when sellers lose control, and in both cases, it happens faster than they expect. The first moment is right at launch. If the home doesn't generate urgency in the first week, buyer behavior changes. Your showing activity becomes feedback instead of offers. You're getting reports, not results. And the decisions you start making are reactive instead of strategic. That's a very different place to be negotiating from. The next moment is when the market starts making decisions for you. A price reduction is a legitimate tool when it's part of the plan. But when buyers sense that a seller is reacting, when the days on market have already told the story, that same price reduction hits completely different. They negotiate harder. They ask for more because the dynamic has shifted and buyers pick up on that right away. I'm not telling you this to create anxiety. I'm telling you because understanding these 2 moments and building a strategy that bypasses them entirely is exactly what separates a clean, controlled sale from one that costs you more than it should. Let me reframe something because I think this gets misunderstood. Most sellers think they're competing with other homes on the market. And yes, that's real, but the bigger competition right now isn't the house down the street. It's buyer expectations. Today's buyer is sharper, better researched, and less patient than they've been in years. They know what they should be getting at your price point. They want 3 things: clarity, confidence, and the sense that they're making a strong decision. Not a compromise, not a stretch. When your home delivers that, right price, right presentation, real momentum, buyers act, and they act in your favor. When it doesn't, when there's hesitation in the price, gaps in the presentation, or questions without clean answers, buyers step into that space. And a buyer in control is a very different negotiation than a seller in control. The question you need to be able to answer with a straight yes before you list is this: does my home give a buyer a reason to act today? Not probably, not we'll see. The answer needs to be yes. If you're not there yet, that's where the work happens. And it's very doable work when you start early enough. Here's the message I want to leave you with if you're thinking about selling in the next 6 to 12 months. This is the moment to start the conversation, not because anything is urgent, but because control gets decided before you list. Once you're on the market, every decision gets made under pressure. The price, the showing strategy, the negotiation, all of it happens with the clock running and days on market getting longer in the background. That's not the environment where your best decisions get made. But right now, you can choose your entry price with no pressure. You can build a presentation timeline on your schedule. You can understand your specific leverage points before any of this becomes reactive. The sellers who enter this market with a real plan, with their pricing aligned, their presentation complete, and their momentum strategy in place, those are the ones who close on their terms. Not every seller gets there, but the ones who do, they started the conversation early enough to make it possible. Let me bring this full circle. Yes, it's still a seller's market, and that advantage is real. But the sellers who use that advantage are the ones who entered at the right price, with the right presentation, and with a strategy built to generate momentum in that first critical week. That combination keeps the seller in control from listing to closing. Without it, the market is still in your favor, but the buyer in front of you knows how to find the gaps, and they will. The difference between reviewing offers on your terms and defending your price under pressure, that's not luck. It's preparation. And preparation is exactly what we do before we list. This is what I mean when I say strategy matters. It's the thinking behind the listing, not just how it looks. If you want to talk through what that looks like for your home, your neighborhood, your price point, your timeline, a seller strategy call is where we start. Once again, the link is in the show notes. I'm Betti Russo. Thank you for being here today on Living the North Jersey Lifestyle. See you next time.